to Year 8 Biology. If we haven't met yet, if I don't teach you, my name's Dr. Hill. Some of you will have me as your science teacher, some of you I've probably never taught before. Today's lesson is on eukaryotic cells. So if you don't already have a piece of paper or somewhere to write or type your notes, then pause the video, go grab that, make sure you're ready and you're sat comfortably. Today's lesson, as I said, is on eukaryotic cells. There's a starter question on your screens now just to get your brains into gear. Do you know the names of any cells found inside your body? Any of the different types of cells or anything in particular in your body that is a cell? Make a list if you do and write those down. Once you've done that, there's a super challenge at the bottom as always, and it says which cells in your body cannot be replaced if they die, and we'll go through the answers to those shortly in a moment. So hit pause and write down your answers, please. Okay, I'm going to try and predict some of the things that you might have come up with. I think a lot of you must have seen a lot of crime scene shows or CSI, because when I ask you about types of cells found inside your body, people often come up with skin cells, blood cells, bone cells, occasionally hair cells, all the kind of things you might find at a crime scene. You could also have had brain cell, muscle cell, and if you came up with anything that I've not listed just there and you want to check if your answer is correct, just do a quick search on the internet, Google search, or you can email your list to me if you came up with lots and you want to impress me. The super challenge, which cells in your body cannot be replaced if they die. Well done if you had a go at that. Really tricky question. The answer might seem obvious now that I say it. The cells in your body that cannot be replaced if they die are the ones that lead to illnesses in humans. So if humans get diabetes when they're older, not type 1, which you might be born with, but type 2 diabetes, which are older, it's because the cells in the pancreas have died or become damaged beyond repair and they can't be replaced. When people go blind, it's because the cells responsible for vision have been damaged beyond repair and they can't be replaced. So the rod and cone cells that are responsible for your vision, if they are damaged, they cannot be replaced. There are lots of others. Some brain cells, they can't be replaced. Some cells that make up your blood vessels as well, they can't be replaced. If you thought of anything else, drop it to me in an email. Here's what we're focusing on today. We're looking at eukaryotic cells as a whole. We're identifying two different types of eukaryotic cells and the organelles that are within them. So your job today is to learn the definition for the word eukaryotic, name the organelles found in different eukaryotic cells. That might be new information for you. Some of this might be a bit of revision. And remembering the functions of organelles, particularly the ones that are located within eukaryotic cells. The vocabulary for our key skill today. Our vocabulary is eukaryotic, prokaryotic, mitochondria, ribosome, and organelle. So some of those will be new words for you. Some of them, again, might just be revision. I'm going to start off with the bare basics. So we need to remember what a cell is before we can start talking about organelles that are found within cells. Cells are the building blocks that make up all living creatures. And in science, we call living creatures organisms. Organism covers anything that was alive. It can talk about trees and plants. It can talk about animals, such as humans and horses, etc. We say that cells are the smallest whole unit of a living organism because cells can be broken down into smaller things, and there are things smaller than cells, like organelles, like proteins, compounds, atoms, but the smallest whole unit without it being broken that make up an organism. Plants have cells just like animals do, and we're going to look at the differences between those today, as well as the similarities. A group of similar cells performing the same function makes a tissue. Tissues layer up, different types of tissues can layer up to form organs within your body, such as your heart. You might have muscular tissue making up your heart. You might have lining tissue, epithelial tissue, making up the outside of your heart. Organs, different organs, will work together to perform a function. So the circulatory system consists of the heart and blood vessels. You also have a digestive system, so that will be your large and your small intestine, as well as your stomach, forming your digestive system, which is an organ system. Your skeletal system. Your body itself has lots of different organ systems within it, and that's what makes up you, an organism. We call these the levels of organisation, and it's something you should have covered at relatively the beginning of year 7 when you started, but some of you might need a little bit of revision, and that's okay. What I'd like you to do, just to process the information that's on the board, is have a look at the to-do task at the bottom of your screen. It says to write a definition for the word organism and make sure it includes the word cells within it. Hit pause on the video if you need to, and take a few seconds now just to write down a definition for the word organism, including the word cells. Okay, eukaryotic cells. There are 2 different types of eukaryotic cell that we're really going to focus on today, animal cells and plant cells. And if I've done my job properly as a science teacher, you might have seen this picture before, and it shows what animal cells and plant cells look like and the organelles within them. We're going to look at that slightly larger in a minute, so don't worry too much about squinting to see the different detail that's on there. Now, animal and plant cells are what we call eukaryotic cells. They have a nucleus within them containing all of their genetic information. I say all, for now, all of the genetic information. So DNA is found within the nucleus of an animal cell and within the nucleus of a plant cell. It's a little bit of a different story for other cells like prokaryotic cells such as bacteria, who do not have a nuclei. They don't have a nucleus, and therefore their DNA, their genetic material, is just free floating around in the cytoplasm. And I'll remind you what the cytoplasm is in a moment. So for today, the prokaryotic is going to disappear, and we're going to focus slowly on plant cells and animal cells and the organelles that are found within them. Okay, eukaryotic cells then. Eukaryotic cells have different parts inside of them that help them to work. Just like you, inside your body, you have organs that help your body to work. Inside a cell, we have what we call organelles, which are specialised structures inside a cell that help the cell to survive or do its job. The word organelles is sometimes replaced with subcellular structures or internal structures in questions, but they're all talking about the same thing, organelles, the bits inside of cells. Now, just to make life a little complicated, the organelles inside an animal cell are not the same as the organelles inside of a plant cell. There are lots in common, and they're shown here in blue. So both animal and plant cells have cell membranes, cytoplasms, a nucleus, ribosomes, and mitochondria, all found in both animal and plant cells. Plant cells have a few extra organelles, though, that aren't found in animal cells, and those are over here in red, and there's 3 that you need to know about today. Chloroplasts, a vacuole, sometimes called a permanent vacuole, and a cell wall. I'm going to take a moment now to go through what each of the different organelles does. What I suggest you do before I start that is you hit pause on the video and you copy out the diagrams that you can see on the board. So if you've got a pen and paper handy, a pencil, even if it's just a rough sketch, if you can sketch out the shapes that you see in front of you. Okay, hit pause on the video now if you need to do that. Okay, I'm going to start logically. I'm going to go down this list here and then this list over here. A cell membrane. The job of a cell membrane is to control what goes into and out of the cell. So cells need nutrients and water, and they're going to go through the cell membrane into the cell. It's also going to produce some waste, perhaps like carbon dioxide, which is going to need to leave the cell, and that will pass through the cell membrane and leave. The same is true for a plant cell. It has nutrients that need to get in, and it has waste that needs to leave as well, and that's the cell membrane that controls what goes in and out of the cell. I say the cell membrane is kind of like the door, because the door to a room is what controls what goes in and out of the room, and the cell membrane is that door. It controls what enters and leaves the cell. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like liquid that fills the empty spaces of the cell. So it looks like this animal cell looks quite empty, but actually all this white bit here is filled up with the cytoplasm, a jelly-like substance in which most chemical reactions occur. And it's the same for the plant cell. This white patch here, the cytoplasm is where most of the chemical reactions occur. The nucleus. You might have learned the incorrect definition for the nucleus. When you're in year 7, and sometimes if you've learnt about this earlier than year 7, you say that the nucleus controls the cell. And actually that's too vague. It's not detailed enough for what you need to know. The nucleus is where genetic material can be found. And by genetic material we mean DNA in this case. So it's the nucleus where DNA and chromosomes are stored. And it's the DNA and the chromosomes that control the cell. Underneath nucleus, we've got ribosomes. Sorry how blurry that is. The spelling will be on the next slide. Ribosomes. The job of a ribosome is to make proteins. Ribosomes make proteins that are used to repair the cell if it becomes damaged, and ribosomes may also make proteins that are needed for cell growth and cell division if the cell's making copies of itself. So the job of a ribosome, found in both animal and plant cells, is to make proteins. Mitochondria, this might be a new one for you. Mitochondria, the absolute perfect definition for mitochondria is that they release energy due to respiration. Okay? They release energy. They don't make it. You can't make energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. What they do, though, is they release it as a result of a chemical reaction called respiration. And you should have learned already about respiration. But if not, just a quick recap. Respiration is when your body reacts oxygen with glucose to release carbon dioxide and water and releases energy as a byproduct. And that energy is needed by the cell, by you, to perform lots of different functions. So all of those are in common between animal and plant cells. Slightly different then, the extra organelles or internal structures found within a plant cell, the chloroplast. Chloroplasts are green. They're green because they've got a substance inside of them called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is that green substance that absorbs light from the sun or from any other place and uses it for photosynthesis. So photosynthesis happens inside chloroplasts. You have the vacuole, as I said, often called the permanent vacuole. It's an empty space that fills up with water and cell sap. Cell sap is mainly just made up of water and sugary substances that the cell creates and stores for later. The vacuole can change size. If your plants are well watered, the vacuole will be quite large. But if you go on holiday, you go away, if you get to water your house plants, you'll notice they start to wilt and lean over. And that's because the vacuole starts to empty. And the vacuole, when it's full, gives the cell some shape. So that's why plants start to wilt when their vacuole is empty. And then lastly, the cell wall. The cell wall, its job is to support and protect the plant cell. So it supports the shape and the structure of the plant cell, and it also protects it from damage to a limited extent. Plant cell walls are made up of cellulose, and that'll be different from some other cell walls that you'll learn about next lesson. So it's important to remember that cell walls are made of cellulose. Okay. If you need to rewind the video to get those extra details, then fantastic, add them to your diagrams. But if you missed anything, I've put the details, the bare basic details that you need to know on the screen here. So hit pause on this screen if you need to, so that you can copy down some of the extra details for each organelle. If not, we're going to move straight on. Okay, quick quiz. If you've been listening really carefully, you should be able to answer these 5 questions that you can see on the screen right now. What do all eukaryotic cells have? Where do chemical reactions happen in a cell? Which part of a plant cell absorbs sunlight? What is an organelle? And where is energy released from in a cell? Mostly one-word answers. See how you do. Hit pause and I'll go through the answers with you in a second. Okay, spoilers. What do all eukaryotic cells have? They all have a nucleus. That's what makes them eukaryotic cells. Sorry if you said some of the other organelles. We're looking for the word nucleus because that's what makes them a eukaryotic cell. Where do chemical reactions happen in a cell? They happen mainly in the cytoplasm. That's what we were after there. Which part of a plant cell absorbs sunlight? So which part, which organelle? We want chloroplast. Yes, it's technically the chlorophyll inside the chloroplast, but it asks you which part, so chloroplast, not which substance. If it said substance or chemical, then you could have gotten away with the answer chlorophyll. What is an organelle? An organelle is a subcellular structure or an internal structure found within a cell. Where is energy released from in a cell? It's released from the mitochondria. Okay, well done if you got 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. If not, you might want to go back and listen to the information about the organelles again. Okay, we're quite some way into our success criteria for today. We've defined the term eukaryotic, we've named some of the organelles, and we've described some of the functions. So all we're going to do from this point onwards is try and finesse those skills and practice them a little bit. So name that organelle. Last lesson we learnt about microscopes. Light microscopes and electron microscopes. So for this next little bit, we're going to look at some pictures and see if you can't label the organelle that each arrow is pointing to. So this red arrow is pointing to this bit here. Okay, this is a plant cell using a light microscope. What do you think this organelle is here? It's in a plant cell, and it's in every cell in the middle. Okay. If you hadn't guessed already, it is the nucleus. So well done if you spotted the nucleus. The nucleus is often the easiest thing to find on a light microscope before you start to focus on some of the other organelles that might be inside of here. These could be chloroplasts. You can see two lines here, which would be the cell wall and the cell membrane. Okay, cell wall, cell membrane, and then the cell wall and cell membrane of the next cell. Okay, this is an animal cell under a light microscope as well, and they're not naturally blue. The blue is a stain to help you see the different parts. It's pointing to the outside of the animal cell here. So I'd like you to tell me what this outside organelle is. Okay, spoilers. It's the cell membrane. Bad luck if you said cell wall. Remember that animal cells do not have a cell wall. The outer line is called the cell membrane. You can start to hint at perhaps some other things inside of here, some other organelles. These could be mitochondria, but we wouldn't know. Okay, this is a plant cell under a light microscope. It's a slightly better resolution and magnification to that first image. It's pointing to these small, round, green organelles. What do you think those are? What do you think they're called? Okay, those are your chloroplasts. If you didn't get it already, well done. On to the next one. Right, okay, so we're looking at this layer here that separates the two different plant cells. What is the outermost layer of a plant cell called? Take a moment to think, hit pause if you need to. Okay, ready for spoilers? The outermost layer here, you should have said cell wall. Plant cells have a cell wall, as I said, made of cellulose, and that's what this outside layer would be. Now this is an animal cell under an electron microscope. So I'm not convinced this is a real image, it's probably just a diagram, but they've done a good job at representing what the organelles actually look like. So I want you to have a little bit of a guess, if you can, what you think this might be. I don't want you to get distracted by all of this going on. There are many, many, many organelles in an animal cell, and you don't need to learn about them until you go on to do A-level biology. You've learnt about the nucleus, and you've learnt about some of the other bits inside of an animal cell. Let's see if you can't guess what this could be here. Okay, there's several of them, there's not just one. They're smaller than the nucleus. What could they be? Okay, those are the mitochondria. Okay, that's where energy is released from in the cell. And the more energy that a cell will need, like a muscle cell, the more mitochondria that cell would have within it. Don't worry about what these other parts are. As I said, if you go on to do A-level biology, then you will learn what those organelles are and what they do. What do you think these tiny little dots are here? These little white dots, and there are absolutely hundreds of those, all dotted around here. What's smaller than a mitochondria and found within an animal cell? Have a little think, hit pause if you need to, and let me know your guesses. Okay, spoilers, these little white dots here are representing the ribosomes, and there's lots of these ribosomes over here. Remember, a ribosome's job is to make proteins, and they can be found mostly around the outside of the nucleus. Right, that was my last one. What I want you to have a little think about then, you don't need to write anything for this, is why can't we see every organelle in the light microscope images? So I've copied them and put them here for you. This was the animal cell, and these were the plant cell. Have a little think. Why can't we see all of the organelles? Why can't I see mitochondria or ribosomes in this picture? Why can't I see a nucleus in this picture when it's one of the largest things inside of the cell? Have a think, and if you're not sure, maybe do a little bit of thinking with Google, do a bit of a Google search and see if you can't find an answer to that. Hit pause on the video if you need to, and we'll go through answers in a second. Right, I'll be really impressed if you use some of the vocabulary we picked up last lesson, if you commented on the resolution or the magnification of these images, and that's one of the big limitations of light microscopes. they don't have the magnification, so you won't ever see ribosomes in a light microscope image because they're just too small. Mitochondria are larger, but you might not see them because the magnification isn't good enough. It might be hinting at them being here, or it might just be that it's not in focus. And I think that's the reason why we can't see the nucleus in these cells here. If the image isn't in focus, we're only seeing the very top layer of the cell. What if the nucleus is underneath this? And we just can't see it because it's not focused enough. You'd need to use the fine or the coarse focusing dial to adjust your image to get a view throughout the cell to see the different organelles in that one. Right, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to hit pause, copy out the diagram that's on the board and see if you can't add the labels. It's very similar to the diagram we've already done, but unfortunately in science every diagram you see of animal and plant cells will be slightly different. So I'd like you to practice labelling your animal and your plant cells below. I'm not going to give you the answers to this one, okay, because you could go back earlier in the video and you could find them, or you could use the internet for help. But what I would like you to do is I would like you to keep this in your notes and make sure that it gets marked by your science teacher. You could either take a picture and email it along to your science teacher, and the email address as always is on the Cowley website. The spellings are just down below here as well. So each of these needs to be labelled on the diagram. Can you remember the 3 that are only found in this type of cell? And can you remember the others that are found in both types of cell? Okay. Right. Your slightly extended task for today is to compare eukaryotic cells. So what your job is here is to produce a paragraph or some sentences, sort of gelling together your ideas. And the purpose of this is to organise those thoughts in your brain so you're more likely to remember them. So your job is to compare eukaryotic cells. The word compare means to say what is the same. For today's job, I want you to say what is the same and what is different. Start your work by saying what a eukaryotic cell is. So state what a eukaryotic cell is. A eukaryotic cell is one that blah, 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 blah. It contains the organelles, blah, 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 whereas animal cells only have these organelles, but plant cells have these and those organelles. The challenge is to explain why animal cells and plant cells have different organelles. Explain means give a reason why, or give a reason for. Okay, so I want you to have a think about why animal cells and plant cells might have different organelles within them, different parts that make them work. You can search for this on the internet, or you can come up with some theories or some suggestions of your own. I'd very much like to know what you think and what conclusions you can come to, rather than you just writing a list of facts. So stretching your imagination and trying to apply it to different situations for animals and plant cells. Okay? Once you've done that, if you can, take a picture of your work and email it along to the Cowley Science Department so your science teachers can have a look and mark the work and give you some feedback. You could always type your answer. If you've typed it, just copy and paste what you've written or you've typed into an email and send it off to your science teachers, please. So lastly, looking over what we aim to do today, define the term eukaryotic, name the organelles found in different eukaryotic cells, and describe the functions of eukaryotic cells. Have a think about those. What have you learnt today? How did you learn it? And certainly if you can't reach silver or gold today, you might want to re-watch the video and see if you can pick up the information for that. Your last job of the day, other than the written work that I've asked you to do, is to take yourselves over to Educate and answer the Educate questions that go along with this quiz. Okay, if you have any questions, again, email the Cowley Science Department with any queries or questions. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again shortly for your next biology lesson.